Thank you for joining us for our latest Learn and Grow webinar, this one on the topic of the courage to ask. My name is Dustin Petz. I have the joy of serving as the president and CEO of the Kansas Methodist Foundation. Throughout Kansas, KMF empowers churches, ministries, individuals to be good stewards of the resources they have been entrusted. We're to help churches and individuals plan for your future, legacy giving, investment services, and many others to help have resources to do the ministry that God calls us to be about. Before we get started, I want to go over a few housekeeping things. First of which is that we're recording the presentation, and so we invite you to keep your mic on mute to avoid any background noise. And then if you have questions you'd like to ask, you can do so in the chat box at the bottom, and we will try to maybe address those as we go along or at the end as part of a Q&A session. I'm grateful that you are here. Let us pray. Gracious God, we give you thanks for this day, the day that you have made. We ask that you might help us to dream dreams and to see visions and to invite others that we love and that we care about to join with us with their efforts and their service and their resources to make a difference, to live into those visions that you have gifted to us. We ask and pray your blessing upon our time together today and the asking that you do of us, that we might be faithful and respond, and the asking that we do with others. Give us courage this day in Jesus' name. Amen. Presenting today on the courage to ask is our guest, Bonnie Ives Marden. Bonnie is a leadership consultant and financial stewardship practitioner. She has served as the Imagine No Malaria campaign coordinator for the New England Conference of the United Methodist Church. She also provides stewardship education through multiple United Methodist foundations across the country. Bonnie is also the author of a book that was published in 2019, Church Finances for Missional Leaders, Best Practices for Financial Stewardship. I was first introduced to Bonnie when we were working to grow the financial wellness of clergy in our conference. Bonnie helped me develop our current Clergy Financial Wellness Initiative, as well as to secure a grant to help support this important work. She also serves now as the project manager in collaboration with WestPath and facilitating a grant that comes from the Lilly Foundation. Bonnie, we are grateful for you and excited to learn with you today. Thank you so much for being here. We welcome you.
Thank you, Dustin. It is always a pleasure and an honor to be in the presence of people who are courageous enough to explore the topic of asking and gift cultivation. That's an important value and priority for the ministries of our United Methodist Foundations, and delighted to engage in this conversation with those of you that are present and to hopefully offer some provocative questions for those of you who watch the recording of today's conversation. I'm going to start with a question because cultivating the craft of asking is all about asking questions. The question that I want to ask you is, what's the largest ask that you ever made? So I wanted you to see, even in just those of us that are in this space, the variety of experiences and the levels of asking that are actually already occurring in your life and ministry. And what I want to do is, in this session, invite you to consider the possibility that asking is something you're actually already doing, and probably doing more effectively than you realize, because the baseline, the foundational ingredient is relationship. And you're all in the business of building, enhancing, exploring your relationships with others and with the work that God's called you to in your ministry setting. So thank you for receiving that question and looking at what you had to offer in response to it personally, but then also be aware that everybody else around you has got wisdom and experience and is a potential resource. You're all resources to each other as this work continues to unfold. And again, gratitude to the foundation for creating this space for this conversation, because who knows what becomes possible when we engage in exploring this work together. So can you now see one slide? It says cultivating the craft of asking. We're going to make these slides available to you, and Brad and Dan, you may have a copy of a handout that's a way to take notes about this conversation if that's useful to you. Some people find that helpful, some people find that a distraction, but wanted to make those resources available to you. So the first thing that I want to acknowledge, let's see, get my slides to move here, is that asking is often an activity that we connect with this word. How am I going to do this? Can I do this? Do I have the capacity? Am I going to do it right? Can I do this? And I'm reminded, this reminds me of hikers, right, who start out with an audacious vision of getting to the peak, and then sometimes discovering that what looks like a peak is actually just a plateau that helps you to see the next peak. And the same is true, I believe, of asking. The first ask, and I think Dustin knows this, the first invitation with a family or a donor is always just the first. And there will hopefully be a next ask, a next opportunity, a next plateau, a next opportunity to explore with the people that you're in relationship with. So I also want to invite you, whoops, I'm going the wrong way, invite you to think about this word. And God gives us courage. Mountaintop experiences are often connected with deeply spiritual engagement. What does it take to realize that the corollary of challenge is courage, and it's courage that helps us to rise to these challenges. So I want to thank you for being here and for being in this conversation, because I know it takes courage to even engage in conversations about asking, about cultivating donors. And again, remember, this is a journey that you're on with other people. This work is never meant to be done alone. You have your faith, we have our faith, we have our spiritual companions and guides, and we have our trust and faith in Jesus to sustain us. So challenge and courage are very real parts of this work. Now, I want to take a moment to think about the concept of having a trade. All of the people that you meet or in relationship with have some craft or trade that's important to them and to their ministry. It's biblical. Is this work biblical? It's very biblical. Jesus had a trade, and he used that trade to sustain his ministry. So I'm going to ask all of you again to answer this question very briefly. If you could practice any trade to support your ministry, what would it be? And this is a little bit of a gifts identification question too. It'll help you to see the resources that are already in the room. And again, it's a question you can ask in your ministry setting. It's great for finance committees. What are your people called to do or practice? What do they have for gifts and trades in their ministry? So I'm going to invite all of you just to quickly share what your response to this question would be.
Teacher.
Dustin says teacher. Dan, what would you think?
I enjoyed my time working in the cabinet shop.
Woodworking? Yeah, creating things, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful things.
Using my hands.
Yeah, using our hands. Brad, what about you? Are you there, Tyler or Gloria? What would you do?
I really enjoy getting to know people and hearing their stories. That's part of that ministry that I really enjoy.
Yeah, collecting stories.
Mhm.
Great. This picture is emblematic of one of my passions and goals, is to be a better quilter. I love putting pieces and patches of things together, especially remnants, and piecing things to create something new from something that was just leftovers. So if you haven't asked this question of your people, it can be very powerful. What is their trade, passion, or interest? Another prompting question that I'll give you, especially for Brad and Dan, as you're thinking about your congregations and their development of assets and resources. Ask people what their first job was and the values they gained from that experience. When I've asked that question, people who have done paper routes, they've had experience collecting funds from people, and they may have experience and courage, or they may have baggage about that. So finding about what types of industries, crafts, trades people have previously or actively practicing can be a very important piece of information as you build relationships with people, because then you know something about where they've been and what they've done. So Dan, would you model that for us? What was your first job and the values you learned from that experience?
My first ever job, geez, I was just a kid. I was a busboy.
Okay.
I learned I didn't want to work in the restaurant industry.
Very valuable. And you learned that the customer's always right, correct?
Yeah, and I also learned that good supervision, how important that was. I guess, after, because the restaurant manager, he wasn't a kind person.
Okay.
At least not to me anyway.
Got it. So you learned some values, you learned some things that have probably shown up in your life throughout your life. Would you say that's true, Dan?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, jot that down as a powerful question to begin to deepen your relationship with people, because everybody's got a story to tell. Tyler loves hearing stories. And when you ask people their early experiences, they will be honest and authentic with you, and you'll get some very helpful information as you think about deepening and cultivating your relationship with that person. Pretty neutral question, and very powerful. Any questions about that question? So that's a good prompt for this next slide, which is a reminder that we really have to begin the work of cultivating relationships with people by looking at values. And oftentimes it's understanding our personal history and relationship with money, exploring our biblical foundations, motivations, and meanings of money that can uncover some important concepts or experiences that either need to be honored or need to be processed and passed on. In cultivating the craft of asking, I invite people to think about their own personal relationship, for example, with the question that we just asked, and then invite people to remember it's biblical, because we've got to take the log out of our own eyes before attempting to assist another person, right? So what's our own barriers to the courage and challenges that we face when we just engage in talking about money? Now, on this next slide, when I show it, it's going to have 2 words on it. And I invite you to think about which of these 2 words most greatly impacts your relationship with money. 2 different ways of being. Which one are you most vulnerable to as an influencer on your relationship with money? These 2 words represent extremes, with deprivation at one end and excess at the other end. So deprivation would be like my mother-in-law. I'll eat the chicken back. Don't worry about it. I'll fall on the sword. I'll take the short end of the stick, which can be honorable, but it also can be a form of victim mode, right? And at the other extreme, excess would represent the consumer culture that we live in, and dealing with our pains and our fears by going shopping. And that can be therapeutic, and it can be excessive and problematic. So I'm inviting you to go to the chat window and write in either the word deprivation or excess, just to name or claim the space in which you're most vulnerable to being disempowered in your relationship with money. So these 2 options is a biggest challenge for you. This is a space to note this in the worksheet if you're following along with the worksheet. See some votes for deprivation. Yeah. And sometimes in your family or family of origin, there can be opposites, right? I would choose deprivation. I think my husband's vulnerable to excess. He might not believe that. But again, it's just owning that we are on this journey, and our own relationship with money is going to influence everything we bring to a relationship with another person, right? So again, this is getting clear about what our own lens is when we think about the world, finances, and money, because again, it's going to influence our comfort, our courage, and our ability to open-mindedly accept people where they are, which is one of the foundational goals for being a good listener and a good asker. So here's some examples of some, I just asked you a provocative question and grateful for your willingness to look at that. Cultivating the craft of asking means moving beyond our fears about talking about money, creating space for people to have a conversation they've been afraid of having, possibly to share something that's been weighing them down. So if we can shift from thinking of asking and cultivating relationships from being something that's hard work and a challenge and a rock we have to push up the hill, to actually being the spiritual and pastoral act of helping people to tell their stories, name their realities, and then let go, lift and release some of those rocks that are weighing them down. So here's some examples of some other provocative questions that just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about. Can you imagine the possibility of asking somebody who's supposed to be financially responsible in your family? There's a dozen different answers to that question. How does this work in your family? Were there financial upheavals in your childhood? It's helpful to know if somebody's been part of a family where the dad's business went under when they were in high school, or when their dad's business took off and all of a sudden there was abundance of resources for family adventures. Were you expected to marry for money? Interesting stories you could get people to tell you. What associations do you make about gender and money? So I invite you to think about the questions that aren't being asked and see if you have the courage to just offer a question. This is a real pastoral leadership move. Just put a question out there and see how people react and respond to it. And you'll get some very, very valuable information about where people are coming from. You may discover something about yourself too, that again could be a form of release and freedom from the stories that we're telling ourselves, which may or may not be true. Now on this next slide, I want you to tell me what you see. Anybody could just unmute. What do you see in this picture?
Great diversity and harmony. Their different roles.
Yeah. It's a picture of an underwater ecosystem that appears to be very plentiful and abundant. And the question I'd invite you to reflect on is, do you see the abundance or do you see scarcity? Different people are going to see different things. And so again, when you think about yourself as cultivating relationships, am I the type of person who sees endless possibilities and curiosity? Or am I the type of person who's going to count how many fish there are in this picture and how many days that's going to feed my family? Again, people are going to answer a whole different set of answers. And it will help you as a cultivator of donors to know something about the culture of your congregation or community or the donor that you're talking to. Because if they've had a rich experience of abundance and plenty and God's provision, you're going to be able to have a very different conversation with them than if there's someone who's actually focusing on the trials and the troubles and the challenges of life. So again, this is about helping us to see how other people see the world so they can be empowered and strengthened. So here's another question. What exactly is the purpose of asking and who benefits from it? Is asking about me getting my job done? Or is it about me inviting someone else to be part of the powerful mission and ministry that we're providing to our community through our congregation? Can you hear the difference, Dan, between those two questions? We spend an awful lot of our lives doing what has to be done. And I'm inviting you, because you're here today, to think about the possibility that God is inviting you to celebrate what's possible, to be a person who thinks about invitational asking. Will you join us in kingdom work? Very different from will you help us fund the budget? right? And much more effective to raise people's sights and to recognize that our role as people who generate asks and generate questions is to bring out the best in people, to liberate people, to free people up, to experience the joy of generosity. When at the same time, we've got a whole bunch of people who are worrying about funding the budget. Now, here's an important element of asking that I want you to remember, to write this down. When you ask somebody for something, anything, you're giving them a gift. We often frame it as an obligation. I have to ask. I have to see if these people will support us next year. But it's actually a gift because your time and attention is valuable. So, and I do a lot of invitations by email and phone calls, and I have to coach myself, remind myself, I'm giving people the gift of my time and attention, and they will be blessed by it, and they will notice it, and they'll notice whether I show up as someone who's excited about offering them a gift or as somebody who's checking off the boxes and getting things done. You with me?
Which probably relates to having that relationship. It becomes more of a gift if you know them and know what they're passionate about. More of an obligation if it's a sales call at someone's door and you don't know anything about them.
Exactly. And we want to do more of the former and less of the latter, showing up in people's lives as a gift. And it may be a conversation that goes in a completely different direction than you intended. But every time, that's pastoral care, whether clergy or laity are providing it. When you pay attention to what's going on in somebody else's life, then they've received a gift from you. So this next section, we're going to look into that whole concept a little more deeply. What does it mean to honor others as we give them the gift of our attention, be in conversation with them, invite them to support something we're interested in ourselves? And here's 3 principles. I'm going to invite Dustin to read these simple concepts aloud, and then we'll explore them a little more deeply.
We can honor others by listening. Listening skills discover others' visions and interests. How does our perspective impact listening and empathy? Self-awareness translates into more effective asks.
Thanks, Dustin. So you're all probably familiar with the concept of listening, and we all think we do it really, really well, and we all have incredible room to grow, right? So we're not going to spend a lot of time thinking about listening skills because there's great workshops and books about that. And the question is, how are we practicing it? So I want to focus on thinking about how our perspective impacts our listening, our empathy, and our self-awareness so that we can be more effective and that they make sure that the asks that we're thinking about making align with other people's interests, right? Because that gets you to a warm ask as opposed to a cold ask. So the more you know about what another person is thinking or feeling or believing, then the more likely we'll be able to meet them where they are and create an invitational ask that fits where they're coming from. You know, the most surprising thing for me over the years has often been that others have different motivations than I do. Others are motivated by different things than I am. And so learning how to recognize and understand other people's motivations has helped me to see different ways that I could help them fulfill their needs and their desires through responses to ask that fit where they're coming from. All right, so here's a picture, and I'd like you to think about what the perspective of the little boy is and the perspective of the gentleman might be. And if you have the worksheet, there's a space to jot down some responses to this. I'm going to give you about 15 seconds and then invite someone to give us an example of what you came up with for a possible perspective or thought in the mind of each of the 2 people in this picture. All right, what's an example of something that you think the little boy might be saying?
I hope I get this right. I want to look as good as the older gentleman who's probably more experienced in tying a tie and those kind of things. So
Yeah, he could be thinking that. Yep. Or he could be thinking, man, I'd much rather be outside playing baseball,
It could be.
right? And what about the adult in the picture? What might he be saying? You
I think-
literally get to make something up, right?
I think it's this is a special occasion. I'm happy to be here. I want to look my best and celebrate.
Yeah. Any other ideas?
I think, I see this, it's the adult, that's his son there. And I think it is a special occasion. They get dressed up and he says, my kid looks pretty good.
Yeah. So that's one perspective of what this picture could be representing. And I'm just going to give you an example of some other very different perspectives. The gentleman could be saying, this is my nephew, and I really hope he can behave himself, because if he makes a mess at my wedding, it's really going to be annoying.
Mm, mm.
So all of our lives, we get images in front of us, and we take meaning from those images and pictures. And learning to really empathize and be open to where other people are coming from means we learn to set aside those initial presumptions, assumptions, and judgments to create space for this could mean anything. When we can approach a conversation for an ask with anything could come out of this conversation, I know my anxiety level goes way down. I'm showing up in this person's life. We're going to have a conversation. It's going to be great. I'm going to discover some things I didn't know before. And then we're going to see where God leads us. Very different approach from, I got to see if I can get $500 out of this family. It isn't very effective. Yeah, Dustin.
So how do you weigh out that kind of, I mean, most times when we as congregations are asking people, it's because we've got a vision or we've got a need or we've got something. It's very different to go in to say, where are you at and what can we do versus I've got this work that I want to see happen in some fashion. And so we've got pressures pushing us to fulfill that. How do you balance those?
Yeah, that's the tension. What I'm talking about is the preparation that we do personally before we deliver the message. And the message may be very specific. We're raising $100,000, we're raising $10,000. But in talking about initially setting aside our natural, sometimes accurate, sometimes completely wrong assumptions and presumptions about the information we're receiving from the people that we're visiting with. I'm sure Tyler knows this. So many major gifts are total surprises to congregations. They come from people that we wouldn't think would have the means. So if we're really going to be open to anybody having the capacity to be a donor who makes miracles happen, we've got to see, when a person dresses that way, I make certain assumptions about them. When a person works in a particular industry, I make assumptions about them. And again, this isn't their work to do, this is our work to do. How do I set aside my innate, culturally informed assumptions and presumptions, because they will always limit possibilities rather than expanding them. And this is not a once and done thing. This is all of our lives, setting aside, meeting people where they're at, and not trying to step away from the assumptions that life teaches us to make. All right. Good work. Good questions. Now I'm going to show you another picture, and it's another perspective question, and see what you have for an answer to this question. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? Anybody brave enough to pose an answer? I'm going to frame it in the realm of the work that we're doing. What comes first, building relationships with people or making an ask?
Relationship has to come first, I think.
Mm-hmm.
For most ask, I mean, you have to have a relationship there.
Maybe. So that question, I think, is as mysterious as this question, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Because it's in the process of building relationships that you find the information that will help you to make an effective ask. And at the same time, it may be a testing the waters or provocative ask that'll be the first step in building a relationship with someone. So yes, Tyler, relationships are trumps everything. And the way you build a relationship may be asking some questions. Probably it's always going to be asking some questions. So the answer is it depends, right? Do I have a relationship that I can build on, or do I not have a relationship and I need to build on it with some asks and some questions? Okay. Again, I'm embodying the reality that all this work is a process. There's no perfect place to start. There's no perfect place to finish. It's a journey that we get to be on with people. And it's a journey of adventure and challenge, and takes courage and curiosity. Finally, I got one more perspective picture for you. What do you think this guy's saying? Go ahead, Tyler.
Kind of like something like, huh? What's going on? I don't understand. Kind of confused there.
Yep, could be confused.
I think he's curious, or she is curious, because normally they just turn their heads propped up, I would think, or I'm kind of hiding around the corner.
Yeah, here's a couple of possibilities I thought of. This owl might be saying, you really think you can get that mouse faster than me? Or it could be saying, I just caught a couple mice, you want to join me? We really don't know. And so all these perspective pictures are a reminder that we're constantly making assumptions and gleaning information about other people and their capacity. And the only way to check the validity of those perceptions is to ask some appropriate questions. Again, the connection between asking and relationship building, I think it's a circular process, and one feeds into and leads into the other. All right. So are you getting the point? This is the point of these slides. How does our own self-awareness impact our ability to be courageous in our asks or our conversations that are full of questions that deepen the relationship? I think it's a powerful dimension that we actually have control over. We don't have control over whether anybody says yes or no, but we have control over how self-aware we are about how ready we are to be in a conversation, a relationship with someone. I love this quote. Some parts of me are so private, I don't even know about them myself. So this work, this courage to ask, really is internal work that has to begin with us. And then it gets supported and deepened and strengthened through our faith and our hope that God is present with us, even in uncertain times. I believe there's a world of possibilities to discover both in ourselves and in the world around us. And that's tapping into people's generosity. Any questions about this question? I'm going to go on to introduce you to a concept called value-based asking, which builds on the conversation we just had. And it's about prioritizing what a donor wants based on what I've learned from them about listening to them. And again, suspending assumptions and our personal anxieties so we can explore others' visions, values, and motivations. This means that we figure out what is going to be meaningful to them rather than what's going to be meaningful to me and to my hopes for the ministries that I care about. That matters. But a person that we are listening with or talking to, they can tell whether we're bringing an agenda to the conversation or not, right? In fact, I think Dustin and Tyler would agree, most major donors, they know there's an agenda and a rhythm and a ritual to the conversation. But in a finance committee or local church setting like you're in, Dan, really spending the time to figure out what motivates donors is just as important as figuring out how to balance the budget. So in order to do that, it's important for us to be aware that as churches and faith-based organizations, we're committed to this vision, that there is a possibility of a beautiful world that can be harmonious and inspiring for all kinds of people. So I invite you to take a moment to think about, again, we got to get our own heart in order. What is that driving passion that gets you up in the morning? What's so passionate in your world that you would love to invite other people to help you to support it? It could be the job that you have. It could be a committee or some special project that you're on, but I'm going to invite each of us to say out loud a topic that moves your heart and that you would be excited about inviting other people to join you in the work that would change the world. I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about that and then jump in and see what dimensions of the world we're inspired by.
Legacy giving.
Because, Dustin, what does it do? What's the results of legacy giving?
Well, it's both the results of the money and its impact, which align with the donor, but just the value of them trusting their resources to God to do things. So it's the impact that will be, wherever that might be, feeding hungry people or giving water to those who are thirsty or other kinds of things. But I think just the act of generosity is something that moves me.
Mm. And helping people do something that is going to last beyond their lifetime.
I think for me, it's realizing the joy of generosity. To be stewards of all that we have, our own resources, earth resources.
Okay. And what's the result of a positive impact on those passions, those calls?
Well, I think we then have an understanding of God's abundance.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's like helping others, just that act of through generosity, being able to position ourselves to be of assistance to others, to share that light of Christ with others through the ministries that are supported, which are a variety, but it boils down to helping other people.
So you get excited when you see somebody make a commitment to something that they haven't made a commitment to before. Would that be accurate, Tyler?
Yeah, or a larger commitment to what they're passionate about. Maybe they've given dollar amounts to a food pantry, but now they're going to endow that forever because they want to see that ministry continue even beyond their life. So they know the impact, but they also see that there's going to be a need later, and I want to make sure that continues to help those people in that position.
Beautiful. So I have a passion around helping people talk about money, and it inspires me and challenges me and requires me to be courageous and to show up, whether people are ready or not, to invite people into discovering the joy of generosity, really resonating with what all of you are saying, because God's called us to be stewards of all that God has already given us, not just to be receivers and consumers. So that the response to that question is sort of an example of an elevator pitch. And how do you say what you're passionate about and why you want other people to join you in being passionate about it? And oftentimes churches ask people to give to the ministry because the ministry is important with that, and they forget that ingredient of the passion and the elevator. So how long something could tell somebody in the amount of time it takes to go down a 5-story elevator, it's about 20 seconds. This matters to me because ABC. And so that's an exercise that I invite you to think about. You can do some Googling on it if you're not familiar with it. But the ability to state what you're passionate about is the most powerful tool that you have. I care so much about this church because my kids were baptized here. We sent missionaries to Haiti, and that is part of changing the world. And I want to be part of that. Right? So that's thinking about how you communicate with people once you've decided this is someone you want to build a relationship with and cultivate their generosity. And it's going to include honoring our own generosity. Any questions about that? Because this next slide is an invitation to think about how much of the information that other people are actually already telling us are we using, or are we stepping over it? So we think about, we'd spend a whole session on this in Cultivating the Craft of Asking. What do we discern from people's lifestyle choices, behaviors, homes, vacations that they take knowing that we have to suspend our assumptions because those may be evidence of capacity, or they may be evidence of excessive behavior, which is actually unhealthy, right? But if we care about people, we pay attention to the information that they're giving us, and then have the courage to ask clarifying questions. Hey, I saw you guys took 3 international trips next year. How would you like to match your gift to the church to the amount of what it costs to take one of those international trips? It's a different type of conversation, and they're actually people's behavior could be setting us up for a courageous ask in ways that we haven't yet seen. So I don't know what your answer to this question is, but it's a question I find it helpful to keep asking myself. What are people already telling me that I've missed or that I haven't understood, or that I need to ask a clarifying question about? Is that helpful, Dan? Yeah. I believe people are giving us a lot of information all the time, and most of the time we're stepping over it. So again, cultivating is really about asking questions. So then I invite people in Cultivating the Craft of Asking to actually practice the craft, not just learn about it, but engage in some sort of conversation, question and answer session, contact with another human being. First, I want to distinguish the difference between cultivation and asking. John Wesley offered the concept of have 3 conversations with people before you ask them for money. He understood the value. You cultivate, you build a relationship. Those cultivating conversations may end up revealing an ask possibility, or they may not. But the invitation to prepare in advance. And in a local church, those quarterly statements, especially if they include mission moments, those can be your 3 touches before the annual ask. And that's why it's really a best practice to not just talk to the church about the church's finances once a year, but throughout the year, and to give people information at least 3 other times during the year. And then what am I doing to prepare myself to practice asking effectively? Am I rested? Am I engaged? Am I ready? So one of the important concepts for this readiness is clarity. And this could be a whole workshop on by itself. But I just want to quickly point out that most of the time in congregations, we have conversations kind of like this. Tyler, could you ask this question out loud?
Could you possibly help us pay off our building loan?
Now, confession, isn't that kind of the way we talk about needs in the church an awful lot of the time? We got this problem, we got the snow plowing bill, we got a boiler that needs to be replaced. Don't want to offend anybody or put too much pressure on anybody, but we got this need, could you possibly help us? And what I'm going to propose to you is that this is ineffective. This is unclear. This is wishy-washy. This is not direct. And people are going to be more confused by this because they're not sure whether they're being asked to write one big check and pay off the whole thing, or whether they're going to be part of a campaign. So just acknowledging that we spend an awful lot of time talking about financial matters or needs at this level of clarity. Here's another example. And Dustin, would you read this out loud and listen for the other elements of clarity in this example?
I'd like to invite you to prayerfully consider joining me as a $100 matching donor for the mission project, your call partner named by the end of this webinar.
Thanks, Dustin. And so the invitation I have for you now is to consider the possibility of asking this ask. So take a moment to think. There's a mission project that you care about, and there's probably $100 in your pocket that could be spent on mission. And would you be willing to call someone and ask them what mission project they care about and consider making a $100 contribution to their preferred project, which might be yours, might be somebody, it might be something that you've never supported before. And then you have the opportunity to invite them to support something that you care about. It's inviting people to be part of people who change the world in the moment now. Now, if there were more of us here on the call, I actually would take a moment and say in the next 2 minutes, would you pick up the phone, call someone? Remember that you're making a gift by giving them your attention and time. It could be a friend, a neighbor, a family member, a peer, a church member, and ask this question. If I had $100 to give to a mission project, what would you like me to give it to? And since we're a real small group here, let's just do it amongst ourselves and see how comfortable you can get asking this question and then receiving an invitation to consider supporting a project. So I'm putting you on the spot. Hey, Dustin.
I guess I'm confused. So you're saying the lesson is to be more specific and clear, I think, about the ask. But I guess part of the challenge would be, how does the $100 relate to the mission, the project? There are times when I see things on Facebook where they're asking me to join with them to support some project, and they set a goal of some number. And I often go, well, is that the right number that they ought to be setting as the goal? It's like, can you raise $27 for my project? And I want them to ask a bigger ask.
Yeah. Yep.
Or I want them to know more about my wishes, where $27, I'll do $250. But if you knew who I was and what the need was. So tell me what you want us to better learn.
So right now, I want you to actually make an ask and just have that experience. And you're absolutely right, Dustin. We have not done the preparatory work of applicability of the project or assessment of the need or assessment of capacity. We haven't done any of that. But in a larger group, I'd say, everybody, get your phone out right now. I want you to call somebody and have a conversation with someone. And it may involve asking this $100 request, or it may not. But so often the barrier is, I'm afraid to pick up the phone and make a phone call. I've even had people say, you know what, I don't talk to people on the phone anymore. We talk by text, we talk by email. And phone is still a very effective method of communicating with people. So in the moment, let's just practice it in this space so that people that are watching the recording can see how we embody courage and challenging each other and invitation. And so, Tyler, I'm going to ask you, would you be willing to pose this question of one of us and tell us, ask us, either tell us a mission project that you care about, or ask somebody in the room to tell you about a mission project that they care about?
Sure. So to ask somebody about a mission project that they care about. So I'd love to hear Dan's thought on this. What's a mission project that maybe Asbury is committed to that you really care about and that you're proud of there at Asbury Church?
And you're muted, Dan.
Thank you. During the pandemic, we started the Asbury Food Pantry, and I think it needs some growing, and it is growing, and it's needed here in the community. And I would think that we should we need to find a permanent home for our Asbury Food Pantries to make it more accessible to our clients, to our guests. So I would ask you to, make a contribution towards a little capital improvement project in order to do so.
Well, I completely agree with you, Dan. I love our food pantry at First United Methodist Church in Emporia too. So I would certainly consider something like that. And maybe you and I could team up, and you would consider a matching donation to our food pantry, and we support each other's food pantry so that we can do double the work in two different communities.
There we go. See how a conversation that had a bit of an ask in it doubled just in the conversation. All right. Good work. All right. So we don't have a lot more time today, but I just wanted to let you know that it's practicing this craft. That's how you learn it. You can think about it, you can ponder about it, you can pray about it. It's actually doing it is where the best learning happens. So I invite you to think about, how do I personally prepare and practice asking? One of my rituals is I set aside time on my calendar. Tuesday from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, I will make invitational phone calls to people. I have to have that amount of structure. Otherwise, I'll find something else to do and it'll never happen. So that's the answer to this question is going to be different for each person, but don't do it when you're tired. Don't do it when you're feeling oppressed and overwhelmed. Get yourself into a powerful position to really listen well. Be present to people. And then we talked briefly before about the elevator speech. It's also can be called a case statement. My invitation to folks, I need to be prepared to answer the question to say, I support this already. What is it about? Why is it important? What's the impact? And are there time constraints on this project? Like, does it need to be done before the Sunday school program starts back up again, because we need to have the space available? This is a very quick overview of elements of a case statement, which, Dan, would be applicable to an annual appeal or to a drive to pay off a snow plowing bill. And then just a reminder, today matters. Like cats, we don't have 9 lives. And so it's important to remember that we have the opportunity to make decisions during our lifetime when we can have voice and when we can be part of changing the world, discovering what God is calling us to be a part of. Today is really the only day that we have. It's a gift, and how we use it matters. And then an invitation to think about what you've learned. I'm going to come back to this in a second. If you're interested in this, there are currently seats available in a Cultivating the Craft of Asking course starting November 18th. It's 8 a.m. to 9:30 Central Time, 5 sessions, and the website www.MYTEministries.org is a location where you could find the registration site if you're interested in that, or you could contact the foundation. I'm sure they would help you get connected. So just a quick moment for any questions, and really what I would hope that you'll think about is, what did I discover? What was I challenged by in the conversation today? And what is God inviting me to offer to the world and the people around me as a courageous steward of all that God has blessed us with? Here's my contact information, which will be in the PowerPoint. I'm going to take the slides down and say thank you.
Yeah, I think there's this may be not a question, maybe a statement with a question on the end. I think we don't get clear why something matters sufficiently, or we get stuck trying to focus on that and we don't ever get to the ask. And because asking is challenging for many people. And the need to, like you said, put it on my calendar to prep and put it on the calendar to make an ask, make it to follow up with a conversation and to make an engagement. What are other kind of lessons that we need to hold on to about that process of courageous asking?
So a phrase that I've written down, I encourage you to write down, is I'd like to prayerfully invite you to join me. And then you fill in the rest, because that you're positioning yourself as someone who already supports something. You're cueing people that you're going to make an ask, and they're going to be able to tell you how much more information they need before they can respond. Some people are like, just tell me what you're looking for, and I cut my checks in a week and a half, and I'll send you a check. Other people are going to want a lot more information. So when prefacing the conversation, I'd like to prayerfully invite you to consider joining me. Bum, 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 bum. And then you really can trust others to tell you how quickly, what the pace is that they need and how much information they need. So frame it as a prayerful request, and trust the donors to give you the cues about how quickly they're ready to get to a decision.
I sometimes find people, pastors and others, are not clear in making an ask. They hem and haw around something instead of making a more clear ask. Is it helpful to like write that out and practice that?
Absolutely. Write it down a couple different ways. Practice it in a mirror. Watch yourself get the words out of your mouth. When we did the Imagine No Malaria campaign, I traveled with the bishop, just a major donor asked. We prayed as we got in the car. We prayed when we got out of the car. We prayed when we got to the door. We prayed when we got inside the door. And that was really, it's a ritual of calming and letting the power flow through you. So people got to figure out what rituals will work for them. Dan, did you have a question? No. All right. Well, oh, go ahead, Dan.
I do like your analogy to the mountaintop experience, though, because anybody who's climbed a mountain knows that it's very challenging, and you can't do it without conditioning, physically conditioning. So we have to condition ourselves in order to make this ask. So I do like the analogy. I can relate to that very well. Thank you.
Good. That's a powerful takeaway. I wanted to know what landed well for you, because I presented a variety of concepts and images in hopes that something lands well for you and feels empowering and ensuring that you have been called to do this work. You're actually already doing it. And my hope and prayer is that you discover the ability to enjoy it, to be inspired by it, rather than seeing it as an obligation or a task you have to get to. It is joyful. Seeing people be generous is one of the most amazingly rewarding experiences. And I wish that for more of you, and for more people as they either watch this recording or have further conversations with the foundation about the joy of generosity. It really is out there. And God may be nudging you and waiting for you to be ready for the asks God is making of each of you.
Awesome. Bonnie, thank you so much for being with us and helping us think about our asking and growing our courage to make a difference for the purpose of our ministries and for us to grow in our relationship with God through the resources that we have been entrusted. We're grateful for your presentation and your ministry. Thank you. Let me offer a prayer as we close today. Gracious God, remind us that you're with us. Help us to see what's possible and to give the gift of others joining with us in making a difference in the world around us and growing in our relationship with our resources. You're the one who owns them. We are stewards. Help us to be good stewards of what we have been entrusted and invite others on journeys together that grow our generosity for your ministry in our lives and in the world around us. Lead us with your Spirit in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you so much. Grateful to be with you, and I pray blessings on your day.